Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Track. I'm your host, Gail Z. Martin, and tonight we are talking about rewatch strategies. We all watch our favorite show over and over again, but how do you do it? We're going to talk about all the different ways, and there is no wrong answer, just whatever works for you. But before we start into that, let's let our wonderful panelists have a chance to introduce themselves, starting with Lola.
My name's Lola Lariscy, and I've been watching Supernatural for 20 years. That's crazy considering I'm only 21. I was a little baby, and I still like Dean better.
Okay, Kristin?
Hi, my name is Kristin Jackson. I'm a graphic designer. I work a lot in the film industry, and I too have been watching Supernatural for that many years, which is kind of sad because, I really should have a life by now, but I guess not.
Have a life. We have a life. It's just a supernatural life. Elektra?
I'm Elektra Hammond. I'm a writer and an editor, and I started watching from that very first episode. But yeah, I have a life besides that. Really, I do. I swear. I just can't remember what it is right now.
Melissa?
I started watching from The Woman in White to The Bridge in Heaven and beyond. Kitty has been watching since 2020.
Very good. And I fell in love halfway through season 11. I binge watched 11 seasons in a few months, so I was ready for the start of season 12 and never looked back. So I didn't get in from the very beginning, but I think I've made up for it with, fanaticism since then. So let's talk about pros and cons of some of the different rewatch strategies, and then we can talk about what our favorites are and why. But there is the start to finish. Let's start with episode 1 and go all the way through. Pros and cons. Lola?
I never finished. I've probably done that like 10 times. So I've watched like season 1 like 10 times, and then things happen, and I watch the ones we watch on Monday nights or the ones we do for these shows, and I'm like, I was doing something. I don't remember what. So yeah, watch the same season 1 over and over.
Okay. Kristin?
Yeah, I guess because I'm a methodical person, I watch, from beginning to end in order. There's only a couple of episodes which I will skip. But aside from that, I think because the stories with Supernatural are written in the first season, though, is kind of standalones. There's a lot of standalones, but as the season kind of went on and then they started doing more intensive mythology, they did have continuing storylines where if you watch them out of order, you'd miss things. So especially after you get past, say, season 2, you really need to start watching in order because otherwise you'll miss important story elements.
Okay. Elektra?
I'm too lazy to watch it from beginning to end. And it's work. It's a lot of work. Also, I'm probably among the few people in the world that do not have Netflix. So, although I do have all of them on DVD, we're not going to discuss my collection of, actual tapes of other things. But yeah, there are things, Highlander.
The series or the movies? I like the series too.
The series, yeah.
I like the
Those
series.
tapes still.
Melissa?
Okay, so I'm so old. When the show first came out, it wasn't on Netflix right away. At the end of the season, you'd get the DVDs. So after season 1 was over and I watched it on the CW or whatever it was before, you'd get the DVDs and I'd watch season 1. And then when season 2 came out, before the DVDs for season 2 came out, before season 3 started, I'd watch season 1 and season 2. So, and I did that up until probably season 13 or so. So every year I would rewatch from beginning to whatever the end of that most recent season is before the next season started. I think around season 12 or 13, I stopped buying the DVDs because we knew the end was in sight. And so I was like, well, I don't need to buy the DVDs. But I did watch it on Netflix. So yeah, I may have a problem.
I think one thing too is that just if you're doing it methodically and watching from beginning to end every episode of every season, I did the math on it once, and even if you invested 8 hours a day, it would still take you roughly like a month and a half of just watching nothing but Supernatural. So your entire day for a month and a half, you'd be watching the show because it went on so long.
Mhm.
So that would probably be a minus if you have an actual job and a life. So that'd probably be one of the downsides.
I've rewatched the whole series 5 times, and all 5 times I've done from beginning to end because I had a place in my day where it worked to watch an episode before everybody was up and moving around or before things really got started. You know, if I get up with the dogs early and nobody else is up, I can watch an episode. It's not going to, I wasn't doing anything anyhow. And then that doesn't count all the random one-offs because Monday night in the Supernatural TFW and C group that I run, we usually do a movie night where we pick an episode and watch it just because it's fun. And I've watched episodes in preparation for panels, and just because I wanted to see Redmate, wanted to watch an episode over again because of all the feels. So that doesn't count. The 5 times through doesn't count all those one-offs. But it certainly helped that first time to get me up to speed before season 11 so that I knew what was going on and who are these people and what happened and, you know, I had to get the lore. And then after, you know, the next time I watched it, it was like, oh, now that I know the story, I can go back and watch for all these things that I didn't know were going to be important. And that's a big thing I think you get out of a rewatch is all the nuances that they wrote into it because they knew where the story was going. And you just pick those up as you go along. Well, you hope they knew what the story was going. What are you laughing at, Melissa?
Wheel of plot. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
in the early years, they knew where the story was going.
But still, when you go back later on and rewatch things, there are things that you didn't pay attention to or didn't think were significant and turn out to be really important. And it's like, oh, well, didn't see that coming the first time around. So that is also a plus of going back and rewatching even some of the episodes that are sort of drab or just not very exciting. There's often still some nugget in there that matters somewhere, except for that one that was going to be a spinoff that didn't take off. I'm not sure it's worth it. So what else? How else do you like to do your rewatches? Do you go just for the funny episodes? Do you go for the dramatic, heart-rending episodes? Do you just like to watch, you know, your favorite 12 episodes over and over again? There is no wrong answer. Lola?
All right. So, my go-to when I feel like watching Supernatural and I have some time, I look for the underwatched episodes. And by that, I mean, when you look at my Netflix for Supernatural, you see red line, red line, red line, red line, red line. Every once in a while, I find one that doesn't have a red line. I'm like, I haven't seen that since I got Netflix. So I'm like, well, holy crap. And I watched 3 of them like that today, all in season 14, which actually makes sense because my mother was sick during season 13 and 14. So I didn't watch anything. So I rewatched Profit and Loss, Ouroboros, and Don't Go Into the Woods. And I loved Ouroboros. I remember watching it originally, but I just, you know, since I probably only watched it once, it hadn't stuck in my head. But watching it tonight, and it was very unusual because the monster of the week was decapitated halfway through, and they had a whole story after that. It kept going. I was like, well, that's interesting. So I really, even though the monster of the week was gross, I still really liked that episode. So I was glad I did that.
Okay, Kristen?
Yeah, for me, I like to watch things they're seasonal. So if I'm watching, if it's a Christmas time of year, I'll watch a very supernatural Christmas. Or if it's, the Halloween time of year, and so I like watching supernatural to get in the mood for whatever the season is. And just looking back at some of the seasonal stuff. The Thanksgiving one for me would be more of the one that was towards the end where the dad, oh my gosh, Jeffrey,
Lebanon.
yeah, he
Morgan.
came back at the dad, and they had kind of their own family, meal together.
Lebanon.
So
Lebanon.
yeah, so that for me was like a Thanksgiving feels episode. So I'll watch that. Jeffrey D. Morgan. So my gosh, I was just blanking right there. But yeah, so that's kind of I like watching, when Supernatural did the holiday themes, and it just kind of, I don't know, it like watching a special, for Charlie Brown Christmas at Christmas time. You kind of have your supernatural version of that. That's what I like to do.
Elektra?
Well, I like to watch whatever supernatural, whatever TNT is showing at the moment. Because it just happens to be on. I have all the regular stations. That's just if I'm doing something else and there's a TV nearby. I'll get out the DVDs and watch stuff, particularly if we've got a panel coming up and I need to review something. I've got a lot of extensive notes. I've got a document that I think is up to 150 pages, single space typed. And I've hashtagged out all the episodes. It's obsessive. I'm obsessive. I watch them, I take notes. Yeah.
That's
Me
pretty
too.
A little scary. We all should do that.
Mm-hmm.
I
Melissa?
I can't read my own handwriting, Melissa. I'm sorry. So it has to be typed.
See, I'm usually taking the notes, like for the panel rewatches. I'm taking notes in the oldie notebook, and so that's part of my rewatch is we'll talk about something on a panel, and somebody will make this really great comment, and I'll be like, oh, I didn't think that, I didn't see that, so I have to go back and watch that episode, even if I watched it to prep for the panel. Oftentimes these panels will give me stuff that I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that. I need to go back and rewatch that. That's the first piece of how I rewatch. The second piece is like, well, I don't have my Real Ditto on. I couldn't find it tonight. It's been a while since I did panels. But there we go, Ditto. But I will go through my book and flip through because I've got everything that we've rewatched everything at least once. When we first started doing these. And so I'll go back to my notes, and if I need something that's like comforting, I can just flip through my notes and be like, oh yeah, I want to watch this one, or I want to, let's go check in on Mrs. Butters, or this Samuel, or if I need something that's distracting. So I can just flip through my notes because that's the thing. And here's a plug. If you want to know what to watch, go back and watch some of the previous Supernatural panels here on Continual. We'll give you great advice for what to watch and what to skip. Leviathans.
Yep. Well, believe it or not, there is a method to my madness on Monday nights, and that is I have a list of what we watched so that we don't just keep going back to the same 5 episodes because they're favorites. And so I try to rotate them. We started out with the Monday Night Watch, kind of working our way through some of the seasons. And then when we got all the way to the end, which has been a while now, I pretty much try to keep Monday nights happy. So I'm picking episodes that are not traumatic. I'm picking ones that might be seasonal.
Hard.
Huh? Yeah, well, not traumatic.
Not traumatic is hard for
supernatural,
It's full of trauma.
Of course. But yeah, from a supernatural perspective, because some episodes are more of a downer than others. And so Monday night, I try to keep upbeat and pretty happy, but to keep us from just repeating too often, there is actually a method to the madness. So which episodes do you, if you had to give me your top couple of episodes to rewatch just because, what would they be? Lola?
The French Mistake and LARP and the Real Girl. I just love the French Mistake. I love the like alternate ones, not necessarily the season long number 14 alternate universe, but the little one-off alternate universe where they're fish out of water and they get to say all these funny comments like, "What are you, Polish now?" And Misha's dead and all that stuff. I just love that so much, and I love Balthazar, because I love that actor. I've been watching that actor for over 20 years. I just love him to death. So some of them are just really funny, and I just have my favorites.
That is totally fair. Kristen?
I guess it'd be the same thing as French Mistake, All Hell Breaks Loose, part 1 and 2, Dead in the Water. I still have a soft spot for that episode. That really, because that was the one that I kind of brought my mom into the world of supernatural. She was very hesitant. She said she really didn't like horror. She wasn't sure. It didn't sound like her thing. And I said, just watch this one episode. Just give it a try. One episode, and then I'll let you alone. If you don't like it, then I'll shut up. I won't bother you about it again. So we watched it together. And at the end, she was kind of quiet for a couple of seconds. Then she said, can we watch another one?
Nice.
So I really love that episode.
Okay. Elektra?
Well, Lebanon, obviously,
Yeah.
and pretty much anything that has Charlie in it, and anything that has death in it.
The tall,
I
lanky
find
guy,
him
Julian.
very appealing.
Mm-hmm. I just
cool.
remember seeing that actor at a supernatural convention, and he came out and skipped across the stage, and it was like, wow, death skips.
Well, and he's in the Umbrella
Oh, Academy.
Academy. Yeah, he's just cool.
Mm-hmm. Melissa?
I didn't do my homework because I didn't look up titles.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Unpopular opinion. Bugs. I like Bugs. I know it was ridiculous.
Someone has to.
But I like Bugs. It was ridiculous, and that is like, if I want to watch something that I don't need to pay a whole lot of attention to, Bugs is the one that goes on the TV because I know the plot, and it's silly and it's goofy and it's ridiculous, and we all know the backstories behind filming it and everything, so it's just fun. Last Holiday, the episode where Dean is at the boys' home.
Oh, that
And
was
that, because that one breaks my heart, and so that's always a good one, a one for a good cry, because it's really, that one of all the episodes is the one that really, really speaks to me about who Dean is. And so that one, the hero one in season 15, and I can't remember the name of it, where they're out of luck, and
Oh, that was good. And
Garth
they like
has to-
they dance around all the
yeah, and
machetes
Garth
and
has
stuff
to
being thrown.
Garth
Yeah.
has to save him and everything, and there is a lot of writing problems with that episode, and I'll be the first to admit it, but I still think it's fun.
I love all of those episodes. I'm going to toss out Red Meat and Profit and Loss because feels.
Mhm.
Dean agonizing over Sammy. It doesn't get any better than that. I also love fan fiction with the musical
Yeah, that's right.
and Scooby Natural.
Of course.
And I'm blanking on the name of it, but the one where they end up at the supernatural convention with the two guys who are LARPing as them, but it turns out to have a real ghost.
Yeah.
The Real Ghostbusters, I think, is that
Okay.
one. Those are just feel-good, happy ones to me that there's if anything bad happens, it turns out okay. And like with fan fiction, I love that moment when they're singing their version of Carry On at the end. And you see in Sam and Dean's faces, they've never put that song together with their life before about them. They never identified with the song in that way. And there's this, oh wow moment for them, which, gets me every time. So those are some of the automatic, yeah, if I'm just going to watch something because I need a boost, I'm going to watch those.
I'd toss out two more for me would be
Sure.
Lazarus Rising and Wishful Thinking.
Mm-hmm.
One for just the amazing levels of drama and suspense and special effects and emotion and everything else, with Dean and coming back from the dead, and then Cass's grand entrance. And Wishful Thinking, just like, because, similar to the French Mistake, it's just so much fun. It's so funny. Todd, the kid. I always wonder what happened to that kid. He was so great.
Mm-hmm. So, what are the episodes that, unless you absolutely have to see them for something, you just skip every time? Maybe they bore you. Maybe there's just something about them you don't like. Maybe they depress you, and unless you are in a mood to be depressed, you just don't want to go there. But what are the ones you're more likely to skip? Lola?
Well, you already said earlier, someone said earlier, the Leviathans. I just found that whole storyline annoying and it sucked up an entire season and I was just tired of it. But also, and I can't think of any names, but some of the episodes, really not a whole lot happens. They ride around and maybe they kill a monster, but really nothing advances and it goes back into the recesses of my mind, never to be brought up until I accidentally click on. I'm like, oh yeah, that one.
Okay. Kristen?
Yeah, the Leviathans weren't great, but the one that I never ever want to watch again would be the Magnificent Seven. I just can't watch it. The scene with the bleach or drinking the Drano, I just can't. I can't watch that. I am not into the torture porn side of horror, and that to me is just awful on every level. So that's, that I'll watch just about everything else, but not. I can't watch that. That's
Makes
terrible.
sense. Elektra?
I don't mind the Leviathans as much as everybody else seems to. There are pieces of that season I like, but I can't stand season 7, Time for a Wedding, which is in there. And I do not like the episode that ends with Bobby being shot, because we see him shot and my gut just, I know it's coming and I just want to die there. Bobby is just so much a part of this, and losing him was the dumbest decision I ever made. We needed him to stay around.
Yeah. Definitely. Melissa?
I would agree with Elektra on that. That episode is a hard one to watch, and I will also agree the one where Sam gets married, Becky kidnaps him.
Yeah.
And it bothers me because it was really, really, really out of character for Becky. And it pissed, there are a lot of episodes where the writers pissed me off because clearly they hadn't paid attention to what the characters do and who they've been for the last however many years. But that one really bothers me. It's for lots of different reasons. And I also don't watch any of the Leviathans because I just, except the episode with the Bobby and Jody with the Borax, and they figure out like that's what hurts them, and you almost think, hey, are they gonna kiss? Are they not gonna kiss? He's a little old for her, but he's kind of cool. Like, and it was like the writers were dancing, like maybe we'll do this. No, never mind, we don't want to do that. And that particular scene I love because it's kind of like, are they gonna? I remember watching it the first time thinking, are they going to? Are they gonna? Maybe? No, you cheatered. So
The wedding episode brings to mind the Galaxy Quest quote where Sigourney Weaver screams out, "This episode was badly written."
Yeah.
Well, and I agree that that one's just kind of egregious because when we first meet Becky, she's a little stereotypical, but she's really not that bad. And then all of a sudden she's kidnapping Sam and tying him to the bed, and that just
Not cool.
Well, and
it was
and you
very
can see what's happening a mile away.
Mhm.
and
It just
it was
isn't a good episode in any direction.
no. And while the first, couple times we ran into her, okay, fangirls, we can take a joke. But the season 7 Time for a Wedding felt mean. That was more of a jibe at the fangirls than it was. There's laughing at you and laughing with you, and that definitely felt like it was laughing at us. Now, Becky got her redemption arc, and it worked out in the end. But yeah, that's
Except Chuck immediately killed her. It just, yeah, they were mean to Becky.
yeah. And it's hard not to, as fangirls of Supernatural, to identify at some level with this character who is thrown in to be a fangirl of Supernatural. Um, you know,
And the guys.
mhm,
How would we act if we were thrown in with them in that world?
mhm.
Thrown in with them, and also that the characters are real.
And they're real,
That was-
and we're younger
Sam and
cuter
Dean are real as opposed to, Jensen and Jared.
and
Mhm.
we're age appropriate.
Mhm. Yeah.
I can see a teenage girl maybe not understanding why that was wrong, but Becky was definitely old enough to know better.
Becky was old enough to know better. Well, some of the ones that I skipped, Bloodlines. That was the one I couldn't think of the title for. That was the spin-off that didn't
The
spin.
Chicago set one
Yeah. And
with the monsters as gangster families.
Yeah.
which just felt like it was something entirely separate that got stuck in there and never showed up again because it was. And it wasn't that good of a plot either. So
Have a supernatural spinoff that's nothing like Supernatural at all.
yeah. Yeah. Um, I'm not as crazy about the seasons where Chuck is the antagonist and is picking on them. That to me, I felt like we ran out of good monsters. And not that I don't love Rob, and that they didn't do some good things with that, but in terms of, oh, I have a free hour, I'm going to sit down and watch an episode that I really enjoy. Those aren't really the ones. I go more for, as I said before, the happy ones. So I don't like don't give me anything with Amelia.
Mhm.
Season 6, let's just skip the whole part until they finally get their heads out of their butts and start being good with each other again. So I didn't really care for Benny for the same reason. I wasn't a big fan of Lisa. The show is about the brothers. Let's see the brothers. And so I never liked the Amelia plot line. I kept waiting to find out that actually Sam had been in a coma for the entire time and, had hallucinated the whole thing. I still think that they started down that path with the soft focus and everything, and then suddenly made her real because it's not in character for Sam. And so the episodes that I tend to skip are ones that bother me because they're not in character. It's kind of like the writers hadn't watched the show, or they decided to toss in some pointless drama just because, oh, we haven't had the boys have a fight for a while. As opposed to it being, grounded in the show. The boys had plenty of reasons. If you have ever done long road trips with someone, no matter how much you love them, no matter how fond of them you are, couple 100 miles into this, somebody's going to get pissy. And that's without being gassy. So
I have to go to the bathroom. I have to go to the bathroom. I don't care if we already passed the gas station. I have to go to the bathroom now.
yeah. So there are plenty of reasons for Sam and Dean to be pissy with each other that make sense.
Mhm.
Without throwing some in that don't. So those tend to be the ones that I skip because otherwise they just annoy me.
Was it season 7 that the fans got together and rewrote the entire season? I think it was 7, and they just rewrote it. There was like a whole fan thing online, and a whole team of people who were
think
fans
I've
and
read that.
writers got together and they rewrote the entire season. And complete 22 episodes. They collaborated and they just said this was so bad that we're just going to do our own version, and it was so much better. It really was.
I think I've read that. I think, and it was better. 7 is just sort of
Yeah, I think it was 7.
7 is sort of a weak season. You go through it for the couple of good episodes and to get to season 8. But yeah, I would agree with that. What else? Favorites or things that you just never want to see again or would prefer to skip?
Something that you just said. Look at Lisa as being there just to present. She's just there so that when Dean becomes a vampire, you understand exactly why it's so important for him to go back. They have to have her there for a couple of episodes just so you understand how bad him being a vampire is building up inside him. I've got to go see her, oh my God, I'm going to bite her thing, the dichotomy inside him.
Okay.
And because that's the episode where we understand that, and we understand what's going on with Sam and how Sam just like watched it happen. And that's like only maybe the 4th episode of the season. She's not there that long. It just feels like forever.
Well, and the Soulless Sam episodes are probably not among my favorites just because Soulless Sam is a dick. And I don't really like Grandpa. And so those episodes, you kind of have to get through them when you're watching the series as a whole. But in terms of picking ones that are fun to go back and watch, not so much.
One thing to say about Soulless Sam, his shirt is off a lot.
This is true.
And I watch those episodes with the sound off. That's okay.
Oh, and
Whole different perspective.
And they had clap your hands if you believe. That was the episode. Fight the fairies. I wanted to get a t-shirt that says fight the fairies.
What else? Either favorite ones you hadn't thought of or ones that, oh, now that I think of it, yeah, I try to avoid that one.
Well, I guess I agree with you, Gail, about the ones where you have, God being the main bad guy, because he's just such a whole, so much above the class of where the boys normally operate. You have Crowley, he's a demon, he's very powerful, snap your fingers and things happen, but when Chuck is there, he is just so, I don't know, it's almost like they took the dimensions out of him. Crowley is very well rounded. He's got the sides where you love him, the sides where you hate him, the sides where he's shades of gray. And he's always a very interesting character, but Chuck, when they revealed him to be God, they just kind of flattened him out. And he didn't have that depth to him anymore. So as the prophet, he was interesting and he had depth and he had motivations and he had character, but as God, he was just like, well, I'm just pissed off at everything. So I'm just going to snap my fingers and the worlds are gone. Goodbye. And it just really... Yeah.
And it's not even a religious objection or a religious being offended. Oh my God, you made God bad. It's the way they did Chuck. It's totally believable that maybe God isn't quite as, loving and wonderful as we've all been led to believe. I think we can look around the world and say there might be some evidence for that. Yeah.
And they already had set up the situation where we already know the angels are terrible. They're a mixed bag of ranging from okay, you can live with them, to just completely awful and terrible. But Chuck was just so powerful. It was like, okay, he can snap his fingers and erase everybody. next.
They
You know?
played that trick already. They brought angels on and made them dicks. Bringing God on and making him a dick was just, we've seen this trick.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We
Right.
need to do something else.
Yeah.
Two things they did really, really well, and that I always love the episodes: time travel, like Henry Winchester, and we get to find out why he disappeared. Dean becomes an untouchable.
Mhm.
Uh,
Elliot Ness.
Dean goes back to World War II. All of those are fantastic.
Titanic
And
one?
the alternate timeline when they unsunk the Titanic.
That was good. I like
Every time they do something like that, those seem well plotted, well thought out, and just generally really great episodes. They all seem to be kind of one-ofs, and they don't always advance the plot. I mean, when they went back to the Wild Wild West and ended up with the Phoenix Ashes, it did. But in general, they don't tend to do too much for the plot, but they're fantastic episodes.
I love those.
Yeah, I was
I don't
just
know who
gonna,
was writing those, but they were on the ball.
yeah, I was just gonna mention Frontierland because we got to watch Jared, the guy who grew up in Texas, really badly ride a horse into the sunset.
Yeah.
That hurt just to watch. And it's a terrible life. You know, Dean as a corporate stooge, Sam as a IT guy. And, you know, there is a raft of fan fiction out there with that alternate universe that just
Yes.
runs with it. And it's just fun because they keep the gag going, except, you know, they finally grow into the job.
Well, the Ghost Facers helped him out with that. You know, you can learn how to do anything on YouTube these days.
Yes, yes.
And I think that's a good example of one of those things where if you didn't watch the shows in order, or if you didn't watch earlier seasons, you would miss that little callback. So that's kind of like a little fun detail that longtime fans would get, that somebody who just dropped in for that one episode, they would kind of miss that reference.
And when you think of it, it's kind of amazing. The writers can be so good at doing callbacks, pulling something from a previous season and wrapping it up. But then yet they do something that makes it seem like they've never watched a show, you know? I guess it's different writers, or maybe people are giving them notes. I don't know how they get so foobar.
Melissa?
Dick Roman was a better villain than Chuck.
Yeah.
He was a more interesting villain than Chuck. And it's a shame because there was nothing wrong with Chuck's character, except that they just, you know, they pulled that same trick out of the bag. And then beat it like it was a dead horse. Like they took the arc too long. Okay, I'm just gonna let that go because I will beat a dead horse. I love Taxi Driver. I know that I didn't love Purgatory, the Purgatory storyline. I thought that went too long and it was kind of muddled and
Dark,
whatever.
like physically dark. I was like, what's going on?
But I love me some Benny. Not even gonna lie, I love me some Benny. And so I love Taxi Driver. That was just that scene with Dean and Benny, just chef's kiss. And that's another one of those stories that launched hundreds of fanfics and took the fan fiction all different ways. So that was just perfect. So that's one of those ones I like to rewatch, even though I always cry. Don't we always cry, Kitty? Yes, we always cry at that one. Kitty cries too. She loves Benny.
Well, folks, you know, we love our show. There are 325 episodes. There's something to say about almost all of them, but we are almost out of time. So before we wrap up, let's everybody say where we can find you online. Lola?
My name's Lola Lariscy. You can find me LolaLariscy.com. I need to update it to show my new book, which is called Soul Pushers, which is a paranormal YA book. So yeah, and I'm online.
Wait, you
Okay.
didn't say it. Wait. Lola, you didn't say it. You got to say it.
Oh, about the old ladies? All right, well, to give you some background, I'm named myself after my great grandmother, the Lariscy part. So if you look up Lola Lariscy, you're gonna find me and a bunch of dead old ladies because it turns out my great grandmother was not the only Lola Lariscy in my family. There's like an aunt there too. I don't know, but they're all dead except for me. It's
Thank
gonna
you.
be a while before I join that.
You made Melissa happy. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Kristin?
I guess you could find me as Anycat, ANICAT on Twitter, and Anycat68 on Blue Sky and Instagram.
Okay. Elektra?
I'm Elektra Hammond. You can find me at untilmidnight.com. That's got links to just about everything. And upcoming Memorial Day weekend this year at Balticon, we're launching a new anthology of Jack Chalker's Well World stories called Permutations.
Very good. Melissa?
Awesome. I'm really excited about that. You can find me on the TFWNC Supernatural Facebook group that you run.
Okay. I'm pretty easy to find as gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. If you spell those right, you'll find me on all the social media sites. I do run the Supernatural TFWNC group, but most of the time you can find me here on Continual. So thank you so much for another great panel. Thank you so much. And thanks for all of you watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural coming up soon on Continual. So we'll see you online.